The late afternoon sun bled across the vast savanna, painting the undulating grasslands in fierce strokes of amber and gold. The air, usually alive with the hum of insects and the distant calls of the wild, was held in a profound, unsettling hush. Kofi Adom, a ranger for 22 years, felt the strange stillness in his bones. His mid-40s face, weathered by sun and wind, was etched with a lifetime of observing the subtle shifts of this land. His intense dark eyes scanned the horizon from behind the wheel of his dusty green Jeep, his short dark hair catching the occasional glint of light. This quiet was different, a vacuum where sound should be, a premonition that tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Then from the shimmering waist-high golden grass, Seifu emerged, an old lion undeniably but still radiating immense power. His mane, a glorious ragged halo of silver-streaked black, framed a face mapped with countless battles. His gait was uneven, stiff, a testament to his age, yet he carried himself with an unyielding dignity, a king in twilight. Seifu's ancient amber eyes, sharp and unnervingly intelligent, fixed on Kofi's Jeep. There was no aggression, no territorial challenge in his gaze, only a deliberate, unwavering intent. Slowly, powerfully, he closed the distance, his massive paws kicking up small clouds of dust. He approached the driver's side, a proximity Kofi had only experienced with habituated calm animals, never with a wild, aging patriarch like Seifu. What happened next shattered Kofi's understanding of the natural world. At the very edge of the Jeep, Seifu lowered his great head. His silver-streaked mane brushed the worn metal of the door, a slow, deliberate bow that seemed to stretch time itself. It was a gesture of profound respect, or perhaps a solemn farewell. Kofi's breath hitched. "He's bowing," he whispered, the words catching in his parched throat, tasting of disbelief. His pulse hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden silence. His throat tightened, a constriction of awe and a nascent dread. Kofi felt chosen, singled out for an unimaginable moment that defied every wildlife manual, every instinct he had ever learned. This wasn't merely an animal displaying odd behavior. It was a communication, a silent plea laid bare before him. As Seifu held the bow, Kofi's eyes, trained to spot the smallest anomaly, caught a faint, almost iridescent, greenish discoloration on the lion's right flank. It was partially obscured by the thick fur, subtle but distinctly unnatural. Not a scar from a clash, not a wound from a hunt. It was something alien, almost glowing. "That's not a scar. What is that?" The whisper was barely audible, a question that cut through the profound reverence. His training screamed at him. Maintain distance. Report unusual animal behavior. Ensure personal safety above all else. But Seifu's deep, knowing eyes and now the inexplicable mark forged a silent, powerful pact. This wasn't something he could report through standard channels, something he could share with anyone without sounding insane. He felt an overwhelming compulsion to protect the secret, to understand its true meaning. Seifu finally raised his head, his gaze lingering on Kofi for another heavy moment. Then, with a turn as deliberate as his approach, he vanished back into the shimmering, golden light of the savanna, swallowed by the tall grass. Kofi remained motionless, the phantom brush of Seifu's mane still tingling against the Jeep. The image of the bow, the unsettling glow of the mark, it churned within him. This wasn't just an old king's end, it felt like a silent, desperate plea for help, a burden laid upon him. His heart pounded with a dangerous resolve. He knew the risks, the breach of protocol, the career he could shatter. But the weight of Seifu's eyes, the sheer impossibility of the moment, demanded action. He would return alone to investigate that mark. "I have to know what that was." The words were a promise, a dangerous commitment to an unknown path. Hours before the first hint of dawn, under a sky still bruised with fading stars, Kofi Adom navigated his Jeep back towards the distant basin. The engine's thrum was a dull counterpoint to the frantic beating of his own heart. The air was cold, biting, but a different chill coiled in his gut, the burden of his secret. Every revolution of the tires was a deliberate violation of protocol, a solitary patrol in a sector where rangers always worked in pairs. If he were caught, his career, built over 2 decades, would shatter. But Seifu's silent plea echoed louder than any regulation. A fine mist clung to the savannah, obscuring details, lending an ethereal quality to the landscape. He cut the engine a kilometer out and proceeded on foot, flashlight beam piercing the gloom. Through the dew-laden grass he found them, uneven drag marks, shallow but distinct, leading towards the river. The lion's heavy steps were interspersed with the unmistakable scuff of his body being pulled, a testament to fading strength. Seifu's strength is truly failing, Kofi murmured, his voice thick with a sorrow that went beyond a ranger's professional detachment. He found Seifu by the water's edge, a majestic, sorrowful silhouette against the pale, pre-dawn light. The old king lay motionless, barely breathing, each shallow gasp a struggle. Yet his ancient amber eyes still burned, fixed on the approaching ranger with an intense, unwavering light. Moments later, from the veil of mist and tall reeds, the pride emerged. Silent, spectral figures, they gathered around their king, a solemn, watchful ring of fur and muscle. There was no growl, no warning snarl. They seemed to accept Kofi's presence, their gazes, like Seifu's, fixed on their patriarch. It was a shared vigil, a profound, unspoken communion. Kofi moved with practiced caution, crouching low, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He unclipped a small telephoto lens, attaching it to his camera. With rapid, almost furtive movements, he snapped quick, clandestine photos of Seifu's right flank. The greenish discoloration was clearer now, a patchy, unnaturally uniform stain, almost as if something had been deliberately applied or had leached onto the fur. It wasn't organic, not a natural part of the savannah's tapestry. His gaze drifted from the stain to the ground near Seifu's head. Partially buried in the damp sand, a tiny angular metallic shard glinted. It was no bigger than his thumbnail, catching the meager light with an alien, manufactured gleam. "What is this doing here?" The question was a low gasp, a cold dread snaking its way up his spine. This was not a broken thorn, not a chipped rock. This was foreign, industrial, starkly out of place in the pristine wilderness. Seifu's eyes, heavy with his final moments, met Kofi's once more. It was a look of profound urgency, of absolute trust, a silent, weighty confirmation that Kofi had seen the hidden danger, that he was now the keeper of this terrible secret. A final deep rumble vibrated from Seifu's chest, a low, guttural farewell that seemed to shake the very earth. The pride answered, a chorus of soft, mournful purrs and groans, a symphony of grief. Kofi, overwhelmed, pressed his hand to the cold, damp earth, feeling the vibrations, the raw, unspoken communication. The stain, the glinting shard, Seifu's dying trust. This was no mere accident. This was a warning, a desperate plea for the truth. A fierce resolve ignited within Kofi, eclipsing his fear. "They can't bury this. I won't let them." He vowed, the words a silent, burning promise. With a quick, practiced movement, a ranger's instinct for stealth, he scooped up the metallic shard, tucking it deep into a small, zippered pocket in his uniform. He hoped no one, not even the sorrowful eyes of the lions, had seen him. The artifact was now his, a dangerous secret. Words, 797. Seifu's final breath was a slow, shallow exhalation that dwindled into profound stillness. The pride, gathered in a tight circle, leaned in closer, their low, vibrating hum now a deep, mournful sound that resonated through the pre-dawn air. It was a lament, an ancient sorrow echoing through the savannah. For hours the pride lingered, a silent, unmoving tableau of grief. The sun began its ascent, painting the sky with streaks of rose and violet, and still, they remained. Then, as the light strengthened, the dominant matriarch, her face etched with a wisdom as ancient as the land itself, lifted her head. She released a single resonant call, a mournful roar that seemed to tear through the vast expanse, a poignant requiem. One by one, the other lions joined, their voices rising and falling in a powerful, heartbreaking chorus. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the riverbank, the pride slowly began to stir. They rose with a weary grace, each lion brushing Seifu's lifeless body one last time, a gentle, reverent farewell. Then, with a collective, silent understanding, they slipped into the tall grass, melting into the golden light. Kofi remained, a lone, grief-stricken witness to an unwritten ceremony that defied the rational boundaries of his world. Back at his camp, the canvas walls of his tent felt too thin, too flimsy to contain the magnitude of what he had witnessed. He sat at his small, battered table, the patrol log open before him. His entry was brief, intentionally innocuous, yet he added a coded detail only he would understand. Seifu approached Jeep, bowed. Pride vigil, not instinct. Farewell, ecological markers noted. He meticulously hid the metallic shard in the camera with its damning photos, securing them in a waterproof pouch deep within his supply box. But sleep offered no escape. Compelled by an urgency he couldn't ignore, Kofi returned to the cove at dawn. The morning mist still clung to the river, but Seifu's body was gone. The shock was immediate, a cold knot in his stomach. No vultures circled, no hyena tracks marred the sand. There was no sign of scavengers. Instead, Kofi found something else. Deep, distinct paw prints and unmistakable, ordered drag marks leading away from the riverbank, clearly made by multiple heavy bodies. They carried him, he breathed, a chilling realization. This was not chance. This was deliberate. He followed the trail, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs, through the dew-kissed grass and thorny acacia, until it led him to a small, secluded grove of ancient fever trees. In a clearing bathed in dappled sunlight, Seifu lay. His body was framed by carefully placed branches, and the earth around him had been smoothed, almost shaped into a low mound. It was a deliberate, ritualistic burial, a final act of reverence from his pride. As Kofi knelt, his gaze fell upon the soil. There, faint but undeniable, was an unnatural, iridescent sheen on the damp earth and on the leaves of the surrounding plants. It caught the light, shifting from pale green to an almost oily blue. He leaned closer and a subtle chemical odor prickled his nostrils, a sharp contrast to the earthy scents of the savanna. This is unnatural, he whispered, the words heavy with discovery. This wasn't just Seifu's story anymore. It was something far larger, far more sinister. His hands trembling, Kofi retrieved a sterile sample bag from his hidden pouch. With extreme care, he collected a small amount of the oily residue, sealing it within the bag. This new evidence, alongside the metallic shard and the photos, formed a growing dossier of a truth too dangerous to ignore. As he stood, two lionesses appeared on a ridge above the grove, their golden eyes fixed on him. Their gaze was steady, piercing, not threatening, but filled with an ancient acknowledgement. It was a silent agreement passing between species, a profound understanding. The story had chosen him, and he had accepted its weight. "I carry this now," Kofi murmured, his voice firm with a terrible resolve, knowing his life would never be the same. The silent plea of the king had become his own burden. Weeks bled into a month, each day a heavy burden on Kofi Adom. He continued his patrols, the familiar rhythms of the savannah a stark contrast to the turmoil within him. His demeanor had changed. He was withdrawn, his usual easy camaraderie replaced by a quiet vigilance. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret, every distant sound a potential threat. The hidden evidence, the residue sample, the metallic shard, the photos of Seifu's flank, felt like a physical weight in his pack, a dangerous truth he carefully guarded. One evening, gathered around a crackling campfire, the warmth doing little to thaw the cold knot in his stomach, fellow Ranger Juma pressed him. "You've been quiet, Kofi. The old king, Seifu, did you see him go?" Kofi chose his words carefully, offering only half-truths. "I saw him, Juma. He approached my jeep, and he bowed. The pride was with him, a solemn vigil by the river." He felt Kwasi, the youngest ranger, lean in, his eyes wide with a mixture of intrigue and wonder. Some of the older rangers scoffed, muttering about legends and old age. But Juma and Kwasi were visibly affected, their expressions a testament to the enduring power of the wild. An even older ranger, his face lined with the wisdom of countless sunsets, mused, "The Marai speak of lions who choose their witnesses in their final days. Lions, they say, who carry secrets from the ancestors." Kofi felt a chill, a confirmation that he wasn't entirely alone in sensing the profound, almost spiritual weight of Seifu's passing. A week later, the fragile piece of Kofi's routine was shattered. Dr. Lena Petrova, a senior biologist with a reputation for stern efficiency, arrived unannounced. With her was Elias Thorne, the reserve director. Thorne was impeccably dressed, a stark contrast to the dusty ranger camp, his steel gray suit as unyielding as his gaze. Their presence, weeks ahead of their scheduled inspection, was immediately unsettling. Thorne wasted no time. "Ranger Adom," he began, his voice smooth but edged with authority, "I need your detailed patrol logs for the past month." He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. "We've received unusual reports of ecological anomalies in your sector, specifically discoloration and unusual soil conditions. You were patrolling the area around the basin, correct?" Kofi's blood ran cold. The specific mention of discoloration and unusual soil conditions was a direct hit. It confirmed his deepest fears. Someone else knew or suspected. This wasn't a routine inquiry. He kept his expression neutral, his mind racing. "Yes, Director," Kofi replied, his voice steady. He presented his logbook, a mostly factual account of his daily patrols, careful to omit any direct mention of the metallic shard, the oil sample, or the truly extraordinary details of Seifu's ritualistic burial. He feigned ignorance of the anomalies, adhering strictly to protocol. "My logs detail my observations as per standard procedure, Director. Nothing out of the ordinary that I recall." Thorne's eyes, sharp and intelligent, scanned the pages of the log. He looked up, his gaze piercing. "Ranger Adom, unsubstantiated claims, particularly of unnatural phenomena, can jeopardize vital funding and sensitive ongoing projects. Are you certain of what you've observed?" The veiled warning hung in the air, heavy and palpable. Kofi met Thorne's gaze directly, an act of defiance cloaked in professionalism. His voice was firm, unwavering. "I am certain, and Director. What I saw was real, and there may be more I haven't officially logged yet." It was a gamble, a deliberate hint of unrevealed knowledge. Thorne's thin smile was chilling, devoid of warmth. "Objective reporting is paramount, Adom. Loose tongues or overzealous imaginations can have severe consequences for our work. For this entire reserve." The words were delivered with a quiet intensity that left no doubt about their implicit threat. In that moment, Kofi understood. Thorne's visit wasn't about ecological protection or routine inspection. It was a calculated move to suppress information, to control the narrative. The anomalies weren't a concern to be investigated. They were a secret to be buried. Thorne feared the truth, and Kofi, by carrying that truth, had become a target. The tension is building, isn't it? Kofi Adom is getting dangerously close to the truth, but the forces protecting that truth are even closer. Can he expose the conspiracy before it swallows him whole? Don't miss a single beat of this thrilling tale. Make sure you hit that like button, share this story with everyone you know, and subscribe to stay tuned for the heart-pounding conclusion. Driven by a chilling premonition, a cold dread that had festered since Thorne's veiled threats, Kofi Adom returned to the fever grove under the cloak of a new moon. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the faint sparkle of distant stars. His hidden evidence, the residue sample, the metallic shard, the damning photos, was secured beneath his worn uniform, pressed against his skin like a burning secret. The grove was silent, save for the whisper of the fever trees, their pale bark glowing faintly in the gloom. Kofi knelt, his hand touching the cool, smooth earth where Seifu was laid. He felt a lingering presence, a sense of quiet dignity that both soothed and intensified his resolve. He knew he wasn't alone here. Not truly. Then, without warning, the darkness exploded. Blinding searchlights, harsh and artificial, cut through the night, pinning Kofi in their cruel glare. Elias Thorne, his impeccably tailored figure appearing almost spectral in the intense light, emerged from the shadows. He was flanked by two armed, uniformed security personnel, their faces grim, their weapons held ready. "Ranger Adom, out for a night stroll?" Thorne's voice was sharp, accusatory, dripping with menace. Thorne stepped closer, his shadow falling over Kofi. "We are investigating reports of illegal wildlife tracking devices in this area," he stated, his explanation a transparent ruse. Highly sensitive equipment, potentially dangerous to the ecosystem. The lie hung heavy in the air, a flimsy veil over his true intent. Before Kofi could respond, one of the security guards moved with chilling precision. He went directly, unerringly, to the disturbed patch of earth where Kofi had collected his residue sample. The guard knelt, probing the soil with a gloved hand, his movements calculated, as if he knew exactly what he was looking for. Moments later, the guard straightened, holding up a small, highly advanced camouflage tracking device. It was not standard park issue, clearly manufactured for covert operations, and uncannily similar to the shard Kofi had found earlier. Even in the harsh light, traces of the iridescent, oily residue were visible on its metallic casing. Thorne took the device from the guard, his demeanor shifting from veiled threat to cold, unbridled menace. "This isn't instinct, Ranger," he snarled, his eyes blazing. "This is interference. Interference with our operations. And this residue, highly toxic. Did you tamper with this site, Adam? Did you try to cover your tracks?" Witnessing the full scope of the cover-up, the brazen fabrication, something snapped within Kofi. Fury, cold and righteous, surged through him. "This interference is what poisons Seifu. This is your pollution, your device. What are you doing here, Thorne? What are you hiding?" His voice, usually calm and measured, cracked with outrage. Thorne's face hardened. He signaled the guards with a curt nod. "Ranger Adam, you are obstructing an official investigation and endangering this reserve. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately. Any unsubstantiated evidence you possess will be confiscated." His eyes flickered to the bulge beneath Kofi's uniform. Immediately. As the guards advanced, Kofi's peripheral vision caught a flicker of movement in the deep shadows beyond the searchlights. Unseen by Thorne and his men, the amber eyes of a pride of lions watched from the darkness. A silent understanding passed between them. They knew and they trusted him. He had to protect his true evidence, the proof that truly mattered. This wasn't just about his job now. It was about exposing the truth, about Seifu, and about the very soul of the savannah. Kofi Adom was forcibly escorted back to camp, the harsh glare of Thorne's searchlights pursuing him. His jeep, his lifeline to the wild, was impounded, and he was placed under unofficial house arrest, guards posted outside his tent. Yet a defiant spark remained in his eyes. His most damning evidence, the residue sample, the metallic shard he'd pocketed, the photos of Seifu's flank, remained expertly concealed, tucked into the inner lining of his worn uniform, a secret weapon against the encroaching darkness. The confrontation at the Grove had split the camp. Young Ranger Kwasi, his face pale but resolute, courageously challenged Thorne's arbitrary actions, demanding an explanation for Kofi's termination. Juma, Kofi's longtime comrade, was visibly conflicted, caught between the suffocating fear of Thorne's power and the deep-seated loyalty he felt for his friend. The seed of doubt had been planted. Meanwhile, Thorne's team immediately began a systematic cleanup of the Fever Grove. Under the relentless beam of floodlights, they meticulously removed the illicit device and scoured the earth, attempting to erase any remaining trace of the insidious residue. But the damage Kofi knew was already done. Kofi's mind raced. He overheard the guards discussing his final patrol, a pre-scheduled rotation Thorne couldn't easily cancel without raising further suspicion. It was his last chance, a desperate plan forming in his mind to use it as cover to expose the truth. The following morning, under the watchful eyes of Thorne's men, Kofi embarked on his final patrol. He steered his jeep towards the Grove, his heart heavy with a mixture of sorrow and fierce determination. As he approached, the pride emerged from the tall grass, silent and regal. They were led by the young male whose mane was now darkening, his powerful frame carrying the mantle of his predecessor. The new king approached Kofi, his amber eyes holding the same ancient wisdom as Seifu's, and then, in a smaller but undeniable gesture of affirmation, he lowered his head in a bow. "It's a plea for justice," Kofi whispered, the weight of the pride's trust settling upon him. Using the intricacies of his pre-scheduled patrol route, Kofi expertly evaded Thorne's surveillance. He knew every hidden trail, every blind spot, every whisper of the wind. With an old smuggled burner phone, he made contact with a seasoned investigative journalist known for ethical reporting and an unwavering pursuit of the truth. Meeting outside the reserve's jurisdiction, in a nondescript roadside diner, Kofi presented all his concealed evidence. The photos, the residue sample, the metallic shard. The journalist's preliminary analysis was swift and damning. The residue was identified as a highly toxic proprietary chemical designed for rapid absorption and long-term environmental degradation. The device was a corporate-grade biological tracker, far more sophisticated than anything used for conventional wildlife management. The evidence pointed to Elias Thorne's direct complicity with a powerful, shadowy corporation, using the protected reserve for illegal dumping and dangerous genetic experimentation. Seifu's mysterious illness and death were no longer a mystery. They were a direct consequence of this heinous conspiracy. Kofi Adom's brave actions ignited a massive investigation. He became a whistleblower, his name synonymous with courage and sacrifice. His career as a ranger, the only life he had ever known, was destroyed, his life threatened by the very forces he sought to expose. Yet, his moral compass remained uncompromised. He had chosen the path of truth, no matter the personal cost. The story closes with Kofi, now an outcast, but a hero, standing on a lonely ridge overlooking the vast savannah. The golden light of sunset bathes the landscape, a stark reminder of the wild beauty he fought to protect. The kings are gone, but the kingdom remembers. Through Kofi, its silent plea, the desperate call of the poisoned earth, will finally be heard. In the distance, silhouetted against the dying sun, the new king stands on a ridge, gazing towards Kofi. It's a silent promise. The truth, like the untamed savannah, cannot be buried forever. Kofi Adom stood on the ridge, an outcast in the very land he once protected, his career shattered, his life forever changed. But as the late afternoon sun cast long amber bands across the savannah, mirroring the scene where Seifu had first approached his jeep, a profound sense of purpose remained. That initial eerie stillness in the air, like the hush before something profound, had indeed foreshadowed a revelation far greater than any ranger could anticipate. Seifu's silent plea, the unnatural green mark, the glinting shard, and the ritualistic burial had unraveled a dark tapestry of corporate deception and environmental sabotage. Kofi's choice to break protocol, fueled by an ancient lion's trust, had come at an immense personal cost. Yet, as the vast wilderness stretched before him, a symbol of resilience and enduring majesty, he knew he had made the only choice possible. The world might brand him a whistleblower, a pariah, but the savannah remembered. It was a kingdom that had found its voice through his courage. In the distance, the silhouette of the new king, Seifu's successor, stood watchful on a distant rise, gazing towards Kofi. It was a silent promise. The truth, like the untamed savannah itself, would not be buried forever.